Okay, so as I was thinking a little bit today about what I wanted to say and how I wanted to present this um, presentation to you today, I was thinking that my thoughts kind of came back to the same basic ideas that I wanted to share. And I thought, you're all so busy, you have so much class and things going on that maybe the best thing to do is give you the takeaway points first. And if you want to learn more about me and my story, you can keep watching. So the first takeaway that I want you to learn is that we all need positive influence in our lives. Look for ways to be a source of support, encouragement for others. And I hope to highlight that today in my talk. The second takeaway is that none of us have arrived at this point in our lives alone. And take the time to reflect back on who brought you to BYU or who's helped you to become the person that you are today. And remember to give thanks to those who helped you get to where you are today. We definitely don't say thank you enough, and we need to say thank you to those individuals who have helped us become who we are. My third takeaway is there will always be critics. Their words, their actions are always going to cause intense pain, but you don't have to listen and you don't have to make them a part of your life. You do have that freedom to choose. And remember, when you're being criticized and attacked, that person who is criticizing you or attacking you, they're the person that has the problem, not you. And their personal biases, their prejudices, there's something deeper and wrong inside of them that they feel like they have to bring you down in order to raise themselves up. So they'll be out there and they will try to confine you to boxes and to tell you what you can and can't do. But you do not have to listen, and they are not right. The fourth takeaway, you are a daughter or a son of God. You have divine attributes and talents that you brought with you to this earth. Never, ever be ashamed of who you are. Never be ashamed of being a woman who is talented at math or at science or at engineering or physics or biology or art or history or foreign languages or athletics. Don't ever let anyone say you're a woman, you can only do this, this, or that. And likewise for the men that are listening to this talk. You're a man, therefore you must be these things. You are a divine child of our Heavenly Father with divine gifts and attributes that are personal to you and to no one else. We do not fit into a box of stereotypes. Don't ever be ashamed to develop your gifts and your talents and share them with the world. And never feel the need to apologize for who you are or to hide who you are, because it doesn't fit the stereotype that others might try and assign. And then finally, go forward with faith, seek personal revelation, and know that the Lord will support you as you use your talents to bless others and build his kingdoms. Now at this point, I want to share some stories from my life that highlights these 5 important ideals that I hope that we can all take away from this talk today. And I first want to acknowledge the great privilege that I was born to. Sometimes we get all kind of our hairs on our neck raised up and we get all kind of, privilege. But privilege is just acknowledging where you came from. And I think it's important we recognize that many of us have had privileges in our lives that others have not. I've had great privilege in my life. I was born to parents with college educations. My mom in this picture, who is there, I'm in the stroller, she's next to me, was not born to privilege. She was an immigrant to this country. She came when she was a child. Her father had an 8th grade education. Her mother had a 7th grade education. My grandfather worked as a janitor for different hotels, and that was how he provided an income. They lived in inner city Buffalo in a small little apartment, and they just made it work. My grandmother, my mom grew up on fried bologna, and tomatoes and things like that. Meat was a scarcity. They grew up very, very poor. I remember my mom telling me that when she was in high school, she met with the guidance counselor to plan out her classes. And the guidance counselor asked her, what do you want to be? What do you want to do when you get done with high school? And mom said, well, I want to become a teacher. I want to be a special education teacher and work with children. And that's what I want to do with my life. And the counselor said, well, people like you don't go to college. And then she proceeded to fill out my mom's, class with courses in, typing and transcription and things that a secretary might do. For me, my mom, who actually was not a member of the church, knew who she was and knew what she wanted. And she went up going away to a community college, found the missionaries, joined the church, came to BYU, met my father. And that's the kind of mom I grew up with, someone that had not allowed themselves to be stereotyped because they were poor and they were not your privileged white American class. And I was then granted the blessing of being born in that privileged white American class. I think it's important to acknowledge our privilege, to acknowledge the great blessings we've had in our lives, because when we acknowledge all the fortunate things that have happened to us to help us become who we are, it helps us to see the needs of others and to recognize the differences between us, and hopefully then be more willing and more able to give back to others and to help create bridges for others who may not have had that opportunity. My mom actually didn't finish college as an undergraduate at BYU, and she worked 2 jobs just to go to college. She had no parents, she had parents with no financial support. She met my dad, she got married. He got accepted into medical school and off they went. She never finished school. She came back in her 40s, came to BYU, got her education degree, and now she is an amazing 1st grade teacher and influenced the lives of children throughout Utah County here. And she's my hero. She's one of those people that taught me to believe in yourself and to not let others influence you. And so I was lucky at a very young age. I had an aptitude for math and science. My mom shares a story when I was in preschool of how they asked us to write down our numbers and go as far as we could. And so I really loved numbers. I could count on and on. I understood the logic of numbers. And so on this paper, I'd gone to 100 and something. I covered the front and the back, and I asked for a piece of paper because I needed to keep going. And they said, oh, you can stop, you're fine. This is great, right? But I told my mom, like, she has a real gift for this. And at that time, my mom became my advocate. She looked for opportunities for me to be able to use my gifts and my talents and to develop those gifts and talents in math and science. She never said, oh, you're a girl, Denise, you have to do girl-like things, right? No, she got me involved in math and science. She signed me up for baseball. I mean, she was a great mom. She let me do what I wanted to do. And when I was living in California, in Southern California, the school I went to in grade school had a gifted talented program, which was great. And it allowed me to move at a faster pace. When I was in 3rd grade, we moved to Utah, and there was no gifted talented program in Utah, but there was Mr. Chadwick. And Mr. Chadwick was the most amazing teacher I've ever known. And this is my 3rd grade teacher. I've had a lot of great teachers, but Mr. Chadwick was one of those people that changed my life. He had this great policy where if you were ahead of class, you could play during class. So he would put up on this chalkboard, he would have a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. And the red light was work that was due the day before. So if you were not done with the red light work, you had to work on that first during our work time during class. Then if you were done, once you finished those red light assignments, the yellow light assignments were the things that we were doing that day and need to be finished in class that day. The green light assignments were the things we're going to do on the next day. If you had all the red, the yellow, and the green work done, you then got to play during class time while other kids were working on their work. I absolutely love this because he had all sorts of logic games and puzzles, Monopoly. He had the most amazing table hockey game, and I still remember playing on this game over and over and over again with other kids. But that goal to always have the green work done led me to the point where I would take my books home every day from school. I would read through those textbooks. I would teach myself the material. I would finish and complete all the, and you had to work correct, right? You can't just do it, it had to be right. I would get all the work done and correct so I could play the next day in class. And that one little simple act on his part, right, helped me learn how to read a textbook at the age of 8 and teach myself concepts in math, English, science, etc. And at the age of 8, I became responsible for my own learning. Mr. Chadwick, or Mr. C, also saw something in me. He talked to my mom, and they arranged for me to stay after school. And he would give me logic puzzles to solve, advanced math problems. I did algebra in 3rd and 4th, like even when I went to 4th grade, he worked with me. I was doing algebra in 4th grade after school. And it was really a great opportunity. And it was really unfortunate when he actually moved away to another school because that then ended. But Mr. Chadwick opened up my mind to the possibility that I could take charge of my education and my learning. He was a huge influence in my life. And he also opened other doors for me. I remember one winter day, I was watching the boys play basketball at recess. And Mr. C was always the referee as they were out there, right? And he would kind of, teach and referee and coach. And I was standing on the sidelines. I really, really wanted to play. But there's a barrier there. There is a court full of boys, and I'm a girl. And there's this unspoken rule at the playground that the boys play basketball, and the boys play soccer, and the boys play football, and the girls play foursquare, and they jump rope, and they play tag. And there was this division that was there on the playground. Well, Mr. C saw me watching one day, and he correctly surmised that I really wanted to play. And so he invited me to play. He said, "Hey, Denise, why don't you come play with us?" And that opened the door for me. From that point on, I no longer stood on the sidelines. I played basketball with the boys. I played baseball. I played soccer. I played football. I still play football and soccer and basketball today, and softball. It opened up the door for me for sports in a way that I couldn't have done on my own. And I share these stories because my parents and Mr. Chadwick were critically important sources of support in my early life. They made it okay. They made it acceptable. They had helped others to see it as acceptable for a girl to be good at math and science and sports. And they defended me. And Mr. C made sure that no one ever excluded me from playing with the boys or told me I couldn't do something as a girl. There was no way that any of those individuals knew that at the age of 8, I would grow up to get a PhD in astronomy and become a professor, or that I would play basketball in high school. But they saw in me something and they gave me a chance to excel. They helped open the doors. We all need positive influences in our life. And as you reflect on how you've gotten to be where you are today, look back at all those individuals who gave of their time and their talents to get you to where you are today, and find a way to say thank you. And then look forward and see how you can pass those gifts on to others. Become an advocate for someone else. Open doors for them, support them, listen, and stand by them. We all need support and encouragement. We all need allies. I wish that every person in my life had been Mr. Chadwick, but that's not how life goes. We all carry biases within us that influence how we interact with those around us. There will always be critics who will see you as a woman and therefore not capable, or as too young and not capable, or in my case, too old, or you're not from the right social or economic background like my mother, you're not of the right race, etc. And they will throw up obstacles in your life because of their personal biases that may seem insurmountable to you at the time, but you can get through them. Don't be afraid to ask for help from those that believe in you, and look for those individuals. The Lord will put them in your path when you need them the most. They will be there for you in your life. When I was in high school, I was selected as the Math Sterling Scholar for our school. And for those of you that are not familiar with Utah, Desert News hosts a scholarship competition where each high school selects their best student in some area, like math, science, business, etc. And then those students put together a portfolio and they compete against other students in the state for a scholarship. And as part of the process to move on to state, during the regional competition, there's an interview process. And we've been told that during this interview, we'd be asked questions about our accomplishments in high school and before high school, and questions about our subject matter, in my case, math. Now, each of these interviews is only 10 minutes long, so it's not really a lot of time to get to know a candidate. But I've now served as a judge for Sterling Scholars, and in my time serving as a judge, I know that that interview usually is the deciding factor. Every student looks basically the same. So in that 10-minute interview, the 5 top students almost always come up to the top in the interview process, regardless of what was in the portfolio. Those 10 minutes are absolutely critical. So on the day of my interview, I walked into a room with 2 very old, very white men who were math professors at some of the local universities here in Utah. And as we started to interview, they asked me about myself and my future plans. And so in sharing who I was, I'm the oldest of 10 kids. At the time, I was the oldest of 9. Number 10 hadn't been born yet. So I shared that information, and I already had my scholarship to BYU. I had a full ride to BYU, and I was going to study physics. I'd already picked my major. And as we were talking, the judge said, well, would you like to have a large family someday like your family? And I said, well, yeah, I'd like to have a family someday. And he says, well, you do know that you cannot be a mother and a physicist. You're going to have to choose what you're going to do. And I was like, well, I kind of threw me, right? Because I'm maybe 17, 18 years old. I may have turned 18 at this point. I'm 18 years old. This is my first time being told I can't do something because I'm a woman, in a very formal setting. And I was kind of thrown. I was like, I didn't know what to say. He's like, you're going to have to choose. So what are you going to decide? Will you be a mother or will you be a physicist? Because you cannot be both. So I kind of stumbled over my words, completely thrown off guard by this question. We had not prepared for gender stereotype questions in this interview process, right? And so I was completely thrown. I'm like, well, I think I can do both pretty well. I play in the band. I'm on varsity athletics, and I was in the band, varsity athletics. I was taking multiple AP classes. I was doing and working full-time or part-time as a student. I was doing a pretty good job of it. I thought, I can be both a mother and a physicist. I can do both. His response back was a solid, no, you can't. You cannot do both. You have to choose one or the other. What are you going to choose? And he actually refused to move on with the interview. He would not move on until I chose one or the other. And the other judge just sat there. He could have been an ally. He could have jumped in and said, hey, this is not appropriate. He could have done something at that point, but he didn't. I don't know if he agreed with the first judge or if he just didn't want to be awkward, make that situation awkward for himself or the other judge. He did nothing at that time. And I was like forced to have to say something. I said, well, I guess if I had to choose, I would want a family. And I don't think I know of any person who wouldn't say that. And that was the end of my interview. They asked a few other questions, but they kind of steered away from math. They really weren't math questions anymore. I was told I was going to be given a math problem to solve. That math problem never came. And they showed me the door when my time was up. I was devastated. I was in tears. I never had a chance when I walked into that door that day. I was a woman, and in their minds, women did not do math. Women did not get scholarships in math. Women got married. They raised children. They did not go to graduate school. They did not become physicists. That day, there were boys interviewed, and I asked one that I knew from another high school. I said, hey, did they give you some problems to solve? It's like, oh yeah, I had to solve this integration problem and this or that. And I'm like, really? I didn't get any problems at all. And of course, I didn't make it to state. That's a given. I did not advance on. I very much doubt that day that any of the boys were told, you have to choose between being a physicist or a father. You can't be both. But that day, I encountered my first gender stereotype being a scientist. And I really don't know to this day if I should, I'm still hurt. I don't know if I should hate them for what they did or thank them, because I am one of those people that if you tell me I cannot do something, so help me, sit back and watch me become something great. And that's kind of my philosophy in life. I will not let anyone else tell me what I can or cannot do, what I can be or cannot be. And I've become kind of tough and kind of strong because of it. Now, I put in this picture of these two white men here because this is how I see these individuals now. They're almost comedic. They don't believe in you. They don't give you a chance. But when you really kind of peel away who they are, this is who they are at their core. They're not happy. They're bitter. They're grumpy. They've got issues. For whatever they thought they were doing to benefit or help me, they didn't. They completely shot me down, tore me apart. They weren't good people. They may have thought they were doing the right thing, but they weren't. And of course, like I said, I'm not gonna let anyone tell me what I can and I can't do. I did graduate with a bachelor's degree in physics from BYU. And then I went on to get my master's degree and my PhD in astronomy. I am now a professor at BYU. And as far as family goes, there's my picture. Sorry, I forgot the slide. There's my wonderful husband and I graduating as an undergraduate. There's my mom there and my two youngest siblings that were there at graduation. I did graduate. I got that bachelor's degree. If you look very closely, I am pregnant with baby number one in this picture. I went and started graduate school with baby number one. She's right there in the blue on the left. I then had twins between my master's and my PhD. My first postdoc, Trevor, came along. Second postdoc, Kirsten, came along. I started at BYU, and Caden and Ben were born as a professor here at BYU. This May I'll be married for 27 years to my husband, Tom, and we have 7 amazing kids. I have a physics degree. I'm a physicist. I'm also a mom with a family and 7 kids. I want to highlight how important my family is to me. My husband, Tom, is my greatest ally. Although at the beginning, he didn't know what to do. We got married just after our sophomore year at BYU, so we had 2 more years of school. We're at the same point in our math and our physics courses, so we were in the same classes together. And that first fall semester after we got married in May, I encountered prejudice again. We had a professor that we were both in the class, we were married, and he told me multiple times that I was not as smart as my husband was, that I really should be thinking about a career, staying at home, and I really didn't need to be doing these things. And in fact, my homework and test scores would always come back marked wrong, even when they were right. He would take off little minor points for stupid little things. Like if I didn't say del dot b equals 0, which only physicists will understand here. If I just crossed it out, -2 points. It was bad. He would just attack it. And it was bad in the sense that my husband, because we didn't do homework together, my husband would have the wrong answers and he would have a perfect score. They weren't even grading his work, but they were grading mine, and they're finding ways to dock it to bring my grade down. That was a real challenge. And my husband really struggled because he had never encountered prejudice before. He had never been told, oh, you can't be a physicist and a husband, right? He had never been told he couldn't work for NASA someday, which he did, right? He was never told he couldn't do these things because he was a man. And so he had never experienced this. And so watching me go through it, he didn't know what to do. And it got to the point he's like, I don't want to give you my homework anymore because when I would take it into, say, hey, what the heck's going on with this profession? Like, oh, yeah, that's not okay. So he marked my husband's homework down, right? So he's like, I'm going to get a lower grade in this class because, you keep taking my homework and he keeps marking it wrong. And I'm like, it's not fair. I'm being attacked because I'm a girl. I'm being singled out. I'm being prejudiced against. I have the work right and I'm losing points. You have it wrong and you're not losing points. This is not okay. But he didn't know how to help me. And so he wasn't the greatest ally at that time. And there were no women in the department to go to. There was no one for me. There was no Title IX office. There was no place to go for help. I finally went to that professor and I said, look, I have enough evidence now that if this does not stop right now, I'm going right to the department chair and I'm going to make a formal complaint and I'm going to take all the stuff in there. And after that, it stopped. But I had to stand up for me and I had to threaten that professor with action that he knew was going to get him into trouble, into a lot of trouble. But no one ever came to my aid. There was no one there to help me. I had to stand up for myself. And you're going to have times like that in life where you're going to have to stand up for yourself, where you're just going to have to do it and to do it and to be firm. Now, in my husband's defense, he is much better now. And he will basically tell people, stay out of her way. She's going to take you down. And I'm not that mean, but he, I will say this about him because I was raised in an LDS culture and I was told, I was pregnant with my daughter and I was raised in this culture of women stay home and they raise their families. And my husband, Tom, he said, if you don't go to grad school, I don't go to grad school. He said, I don't care what you do after graduate school, get your PhD. And then if you decide you want to stay home and raise kids, that's fine. But don't you dare stop. And a little bit selfish on his part, it's like, because I don't want you hating me someday for making you stop, right? I don't want you to ever regret this or regret what you could have become or what you could have done. And I am really grateful for that. He was my advocate then, and we went to grad school together, and graduate school was amazing. I had the most amazing advisor. His name was Mark Marley, and he saw in me the potential that I had. He didn't see me as a woman. He saw me as a graduate student, an astronomy graduate student who was smart and talented and capable, and he gave me opportunities. And he was great because I was pregnant. I had a little baby girl, so there was a big chance he was taking me on as a student. And I had twins later. And he and his wife, Ginny, and it helped that he was married, and he was also starting his family at the same time because his 2 daughters were the same age as my oldest 3. That was helpful. But he saw me that potential and he encouraged me. Grad school was awesome. They all supported me there. In fact, leaving an LDS environment was the best thing I could have done. Going away to New Mexico State for graduate school and getting out of BYU was the most important step I needed to take. I needed to get out of that LDS environment, that negative cultural influence that was being pushed on me. Everyone's saying, you can't do that, you can't. Mormon women don't go to school, Mormon women don't do this, Mormon women don't do that. I had to get out of that cultural environment to heal. And grad school in another state, you know, and yeah, my colleagues, they drank, they partied, they had a good time. Tom and I were good influences on them. And it was a great opportunity. They supported me as a woman in what I did. And I am grateful to those allies in my life. And as I raised my children, I raised them to be the same, to not judge based on gender, but to love and to support and to help. And hopefully in my little sphere of influence right here, I hope I'm raising good kids who will treat their spouses with respect and their children with respect, and will treat others with respect and see them as children of God and recognize their divine attributes and talents and gifts that they've been given. And now that I'm at BYU and I'm a professor, I feel that I can be an advocate for students. I went through a lot of hard times when I was a student at BYU, and a lot of prejudice and a lot of gender discrimination. In fact, when BYU offered me the job, my advisor, Mark, he gets on the phone, he's like, Denise, you need to know what you're going back to. You cannot go back to that school. He goes, you need to know what was in your letters of recommendation, which you're not supposed to share these, but he didn't share them, he didn't read them to me. He said, this is what was in your letters. And you have to realize that my senior year at BYU, I was pregnant with my daughter almost that entire time. And so as people writing me letters, it's pretty obvious that I'm pregnant and that I'm going to have a baby. I'm going to start graduate school with a 3-month-old. And so these letters said things like, oh, she's smart and she's a good student, but she's also pregnant and she's going to have a baby, so she'll never finish graduate school. But her husband, Tom, is smart and amazing and talented and gifted, and he'll be an amazing scientist someday. And if you don't take Denise, he says he won't go there for grad school. So you need to accept Denise so you can have Tom. And that's the basis of my letters for grad school, which is so illegal now, right? I can't even believe these things said that. But they basically said, if you don't take her, you won't get him. So you better take her too. That was the most positive thing they could say. I had the highest GPA of all the physics majors, right? I was the #1 student in the class. And the best thing they could say was, my husband's brilliant, you want him, so get her too. It really hurt. I thought my professors knew me better than that, but I think LDS culture, and they're all men, there's no women. I think they were they had blinders on. They just didn't see my potential, and they didn't realize that women could be moms and could be physicists. We've done a lot to overcome those stereotypes in the last 25 years. And when Mark called me, my response back to Mark was, Mark, that's why I have to go back to BYU. Because I had to do everything in my power to make sure that what happened to me at BYU does not happen to other women at BYU. I was the first woman hired into my department, and I knew coming to BYU that that was going to be a game changer. I couldn't fail. It was a lot of stress. I knew I couldn't fail because I knew that people would see me not just as a new physics hire, but as a woman in physics. And can a woman in physics survive as a professor at BYU? But I knew I had to, because I had to deal with these stereotypes that exist. And I knew I needed to be here for my students. I love my female students. I love my LGBTQ students, my transgender students, my Black students, my Hispanic students, my Pacific Islander students, my Native American students. I love them because I see their pain and their struggles and their challenges. And I listen to them as they come to me and they share what they're going through. And they're like, what did you do? How do I get through this? And I can get to them what I didn't have at BYU. I can be a voice and an advocate and someone who believes in them, who can help them break down the barriers that are being placed in front of them. There are always going to be critics. There will always be individuals who doubt your abilities and who dismiss your talents. They're going to look at you and they're going to say that you're a woman, or that you're Black, or that you come from a low-income family, or that you're a first gen, or that you're not a member of the church, or that you're international. Pick whatever you want to pick. They will see you and they'll begin to stereotype you. And as they stereotype you based on those labels that we've created for people, they'll then try to put you into a box, and they'll tell you what you can and cannot do based on the stereotypes that they've assigned to you and their own personal biases and prejudices. Don't let them have that control in your life. Don't let them have the final say, and don't let them doubt your abilities and who you are and the talents that you have. Take the hurt and the pain that produces in you and channel it as a source of motivation to keep you going when things are rough, to motivate you to help others who are going through those same challenges. When these critics cause you to doubt your self-worth or make you feel lacking as you compare yourself to others, remember that you are a child of God. You are His creation and you are perfect. Our Father in heaven and our Mother in heaven don't want you to hide your gifts and your talents. They sent you to this earth to perfect those talents. And you have a divine mission that you were given. And for some, it may be to stay home and raise a family, right? For others, it might be to become a university professor, or it might be a doctor or a teacher or a CEO. Some will do one or the other. Some will be both. Some will be both mother and doctor, teacher, CEO. The possibilities are endless. Only the Lord knows where your final path will take you. So don't listen to the critics of the world. They don't know our Father in heaven's plan for you. Only He knows that plan. And as you reach out to Him in prayer and supplication, He'll help you discover the gifts and talents He's given you in this life and the mission that He has for you. I can testify that as I've worked with women on campus, through different, Faculty Women's Association and the Faculty Advisory Council, and of course, playing football with the wonderful, amazing LYFE football team. I've learned the stories of these women, and I've been amazed as I've heard each story, and each of these women have shared how they've come to BYU. And you can see so clearly the hand of the Lord leading and guiding these women back to BYU to be at the right place at the right time, to be mentors, to be inspirers, to reach out to you, to lift you, to help you to become the best person you can possibly become. And these women are here for you on campus. They're ready to listen. They're ready to help heal. They're ready to help you as you fight through barriers. They aren't going to judge you, and they're going to listen. Now, I know I'm kind of short on time, but I can't give any presentation of any kind without including a little bit of astronomy. And so as I've studied God's creations, I've come to a knowledge that each of His creations serves as a purpose and exists for a reason. If you don't know, it just says, I'm an astronomer, and I study planets around other stars. And as I study God's creations in the heavens, I've gained a testimony of that every creation has a reason for its purpose in its existence. I mean, if you really think about it, looking at the solar system, we only really need a sun, the earth, and the moon. So why did God put 8 planets in the solar system? Lots of little dwarf planets like Pluto, comets, asteroids, dust, etc. What do we learn about creation from viewing these other worlds around us? For me, I've learned that each of God's creations serves a purpose and exists for a reason. When Moses asked God to tell him why these things are so, God's response was, for my own purpose have I made these things. Here is wisdom, and it remaineth in me. We may not know the whys of all of God's creations, but each of His vast creations is a reminder that He's in charge, that there's a divine plan, and that we're here on this earth for a much greater purpose than the world would espouse. So in Abraham chapter 3, the Lord gives Abraham an astronomy lesson. And I saw the stars, that they were very great, and that one of them was nearest unto the throne of God. And there were many great ones which were near unto it. And the Lord said unto me, these are the governing ones. And the name of the great one is Kolob, because it is near unto me. For I am the Lord thy God. I have set this one to govern all those who belong to the same order as that upon which thou standest. Now, I'm going to give each of you a brief astronomy lesson about the different glories of stars based on our limited knowledge. We look at the stars in the night sky, they all appear to be roughly the same. And that's because they're so far away. They appear as points of light. And they're so dim that not enough photons of light reach your eye for you to distinguish the color of most stars. But if you look closely, you'll notice that the brighter stars tend to be red or blue. The stars aren't all white. Color corresponds to temperature. And when you're able to calculate the distance to the star, you can determine what we call the luminosity, or the total energy output, how bright the star really is. And combining information about the star's temperature and its luminosity, you can calculate its radius. So we do that. We find the luminosity, we plot that on the y-axis, temperature on the x-axis, and we create what we call an HR diagram. And then we can find the radius of the planets using those two pieces of information. And what we find is when we put all the stars we can see in the night sky into a plot like this, they're not all the same. They vary in glory. The brightest stars are at the top of the plot. The faintest or dimmest stars are at the bottom of the plot. The hottest stars are the blue stars, and they're on the left. And the coldest stars are the red stars over on the right. Those stars in the upper right-hand corner that you see, those are the largest stars in the galaxy. Betelgeuse is one of the largest stars in our galaxy. It's colder than the sun, but much brighter, and it's producing far more energy than the sun does. It's a supergiant star, 1,000 times bigger in radius than the sun. And if you replaced our sun with Betelgeuse, it would engulf all the planets out to Jupiter. It's that big. Betelgeuse, along with all those other supergiant stars, is near the end of its life and will die in the next 50 million years or so. In the lower left-hand corner of this plot, you find the smallest stars called white dwarfs. They're not really stars. They're the burnt out cores of a star that has died. So when Betelgeuse dies, well, Betelgeuse won't. When the sun dies, it'll leave behind a little white dwarf core in the center when it sheds off all its outer layers. The Cat's Eye Nebula is a beautiful picture of what happens when a star dies. It sheds its outer layers into space, what we call a planetary nebula, and it leaves behind that little white dwarf core where nuclear fusion was taking place inside the star. That little white dwarf is about the size of the Earth, so it's incredibly tiny in size. Now, if you look carefully at this plot, you can see that right kind of here in the middle, there's the sun. It's about halfway between the luminosities and a little bit on the colder side of temperature, kind of in the middle there. If you compare the glory of the sun to other stars, it becomes quite obvious that the sun is not a great star. It's not the largest radius, it's not the hottest star, and it's not the brightest star. But even though it's not the greatest, the sun perfectly fills its measure of creation. It provides the energy we need for life on this earth. If it was hotter or more luminous, it would be too hot for water to be a liquid on the surface of the earth, and life could not exist. And if the sun were colder or fainter, we would freeze. As you further compare the sun's characteristics to that of other stars, like its color, its lifetime, its magnetic activity, you quickly realize that stars like the sun are ideal for providing an environment that can sustain life. The sun has the perfect set of attributes to fulfill the calling it has been given. After the Lord taught Abraham about the differences in stars, he began to teach Abraham about the intelligences or spirits that existed before this earth. Abraham saw you and me and all the spirit children of God. And in verse 18, the Lord taught Abraham, howbeit that he made the greater star, as also if there be two spirits, and one shall be more intelligent than the other, yet these two spirits, notwithstanding one is more intelligent than the other, have no beginning. They existed before, they shall have no end. They shall exist after, for they are nullum or eternal. Now at first it might seem unfair that the Lord calls some spirits more intelligent than others. But remember our lesson on stars. Each star is different. Each has different attributes. Each is at a different stage in its development, and each has a different mission. Likewise, each child of God is different. We have different attributes or talents. We each are at a different stage in our eternal development, and we each have a different mission on this earth. Because we are God's children, he knows us perfectly and what gifts and talents we brought with us to this earth. He has placed us on this earth at this time and in our current situation so that we can best grow, develop, and fulfill our mission on the earth. Just like the sun, Each of you has the perfect attributes and qualities you need to fulfill the measure of your creation. Never be ashamed of who you are, or feel like you have to apologize or hide your talents because they don't seem to be the same as others, or they don't fit the stereotype. If you continue to read on in Abraham chapter 3 to verse 19, the Lord explains to Abraham, these two facts do exist, that there are two spirits, one being more intelligent than the other. There shall be another more intelligent than they. I am the Lord thy God. I am more intelligent than they all. Combining verse 18 and 19, we learn some important truths about ourselves. First, we are not all the same. We're not meant to be the same. There will always be someone more intelligent or more gifted in something than you are. And likewise, you'll be more intelligent or gifted with some attribute than someone else. But we also learn that we are eternal. While all the stars you see in the sky will eventually die, you will live forever. That means you have an infinite amount of time to change and to grow. Any opportunities or blessings that you don't receive in this life will come in the next life. You are not stagnant. You are a spirit daughter or a spirit son of heavenly parents. And as such, you have inherited the potential to become like them. They are the most intelligent. Each of us can grow in intelligence and ability to become like them, to eventually become perfect. Like Abraham, Moses had the privilege of talking to God face to face and to be shown all the inhabitants of the earth. And as I conclude, I just want to highlight a few scriptures from Moses chapter 1. In verse 3 and 4, God instructs Moses, behold, I am the Lord God Almighty, and endless is my name, for I am without beginning of days or ends of years, and is not this endless? And behold, thou art my son, wherefore look, and I will show thee the workmanship of mine hands. Remember, you are a daughter or a son of God. Let that knowledge inspire you to take the time each day to seek his guidance in your life. If you will just look, just ask and be patient, he'll reveal truths unto you, truths that you need to know. This world isn't fair and this life is written fair, but I want to emphasize the patience. I have been praying for over 20 years for something to be changed, for something to happen. 20 years later, that prayer finally got answered. Sometimes prayers don't get answered in this time frame. Things aren't fair, that shouldn't be this way, don't get fixed, they don't get changed. But someday they will. Be patient. Be patient with the humans around you. We're all children of God. We all make mistakes. We all mess up. Pray, seek, ask, look for personal revelation to help guide you in your mission here on this life, and the answers will come. And while prayers may stand in your way at times, they will eventually go. It may take a lot of time. For many of my colleagues, it's been now that they're in their 60s and 70s, for some it never went away. But change does come, even if it's slow. Change for the better will come. In verse 6, God instructs Moses, and I have a work for thee, Moses, my son. Can each of you hear God's voice speaking to you in your heart, telling you that you are his daughter or his son, and that he has a work for you? And God continues, and thou art in the similitude of mine only begotten, and mine only begotten is and shall be the Savior, for he is full of grace and truth. God created you. He created you in his likeness and in his image, and provided a Savior for you because he wants you to return to him. Our heavenly parents are doing all within their power to make it possible for you to gain exaltation. You just have to choose the path and endure to the end. And then he concludes by telling Moses, but there is no God besides me, and all things are present with me, for I know them all. God knows you. He knows all of his children. He knows your strengths and he knows your weaknesses. He knows your challenges. He knows your struggles. He knows your trials. He knows precisely what you need to do in this life to return to him, to partake of his glory, and to become like him. Let that knowledge inspire you to put your full trust in him and commit now to follow the promptings that he sends you. Knowing that he was a son of God inspired Moses and gave him the strength he needed to withstand Satan. Knowing his divine nature, Moses made the commitment to serve God and to worship him only, and to continue to call upon the name of God. Likewise, each of us can take strength in knowing that we are a child of God and of infinite worth. That knowledge can see us through our most difficult challenges and struggles, especially if it inspires us to continually call upon God for help and guidance. When you are most weighed down with anger or doubt, if you can remember to look up, to behold God's vast creations, you will be reminded of your eternal nature and that your current challenge or struggle is just a small moment in the time frame of eternity. Remember that after the Lord showed Moses this incredible vision of the earth and taught him about worlds without number, there was no end to his works and his creation, he did explain to Moses the purpose of this earth. For behold, this is my work and my glory, to bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of man. Among all of our Father in heaven's vast creations, you are the focus of his work and his glory. While earths will come and go, stars will live and die, you are eternal. Your exaltation is the reason for the creation of everything you see around you. I dream of a day when we all see each other as children of God, when we no longer label one another as male or female, white or black, straight or gay, rich or poor, national or international, member or non-member, etc. When we stop labeling one another and we stop stereotyping and we say, that's a child of God, and that's a child of God. And that child of God has the potential to become a God, and that child of God has the potential to become a God. When we see, well, that child of God has this divine gift, and that child has this divine talent. When we start to see one another as God sees us, as children of God with divine gifts and talents, and we begin to encourage one another as God does, to live up to our full potential and to rise up to support one another. The day when we no longer place barriers in front of one another, but we help to remove those barriers, we become allies, true siblings, true children of God, and siblings that love one another unconditionally and have charity. And while that dream may never be a global reality during this time of our lives, each of us can do our small part to make that change, to become aware of our biases and to love unconditionally, to become aware of the privilege we've had in our lives, and to give others those same opportunities and those chances to help them, to lift them up, to raise them up, to help them to become the full potential that God has in store for them. Remember that we are all God's children and that he loves all of us. And he expects each one of us to be an ally to one another, to lift one another, to strengthen one another, and help each other reach that full potential. Remember that our Father in heaven knows you and he loves you. You are his child and the workmanship of his hands. And he wants nothing more than for you to return to him and become like him someday. As you face the challenges and the struggles in life, they're going to come because of the biases that we have. Never forget to look up. There is always one who knows you, who knows your divine potential, and who loves you unconditionally. Or I say more than one. Your heavenly parents are there and they're waiting for you, and they will help you find your place in the universe. And may each of us fulfill our missions on this earth to strengthen and support one another, that we can all find our place in this universe and all reach our great potential to become divine sons and daughters of God, heirs to the kingdom, and heirs to all the blessings he has for his children. Good luck as you go through BYU, and know that we are here for you, that we love you and we care, and we will help you in any ways that we can. And I say in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.